So what do you say then to people? A lot of people might pick up your book thinking, I'm not a creative person. What can I learn? How can I learn to be more creative? Can I follow frameworks? Is there like a magic pill I should be taking? What can I do? So what do you say to people who think they're not creative?
Yeah. So first of all, they're wrong. I mean, the science shows us there's this theory called the threshold theory, which has been a well-replicated study now, which basically shows that above a relatively average IQ threshold, we actually all have the same creative potential. And so the key thing there is potential. Now, creative potential, it turns out, is very, very widespread, but achievement is not, right? So I talk about that gap between potential and achievement, and that's really where there's sort of like, you have to figure this out. And the key thing there is that achievement comes as a result of developing skills in those three things I talked about: timing, craft, and distribution. And the thing is, I think most people don't think of timing as something you can develop, but actually, I go into this a lot in the book, but it's actually very much something you can get better at and something you can nurture. And so, for example, just to give one example, focusing on timing, but it turns out that the ideas that tend to take hold, the ideas that tend to be well-timed, tend to be ideas that have one foot in the familiar and one foot in the novel. So they're ideas that take something from the old and add something from the new. So for example, Star Wars was a Western in space. West Side Story is Romeo and Juliet, but they're on the West Side, right? Like, this is a very common thing you see. I mean, you look at the iPad, for example, and the iPad was an iPhone without a phone. The iPhone was an iPod with a phone. The iPod was a somewhat better MP3 player. And so what you find is that actually, when you think about the ideas that take off, you can actually learn how to balance the new and the old. And the new and the old is really important because as humans, we have these two contradictory desires. On one hand, we crave things that are familiar because they make us feel safe, right? The unknown represents risk, but familiarity equals safety, and we like safety. On the other side, as humans, we've also learned that new things can represent potential reward. And so we apply this idea of a novelty bonus to new things, this idea of, wow, there could be something valuable. And so even though I don't know, I give it sort of more credit in my head. So I want to go check it out. Like when we want to go try a new restaurant, that's all a novelty bonus. The thing is, these two forces are literally contradictory, right? The idea of we both want the familiar and we want the novel. And in evolutionary psychology, there's actually a lot of contradictions. And what those contradictions usually lead to is some sort of elegant mechanism. In this case, that elegant mechanism is this balance of, we like ideas that are a little bit old and a little bit new. We don't like radical novelty. Rather, we like things that have something familiar, but also something novel that will drive our intrigue and interest.